Hi, welcome back to Called to Homeschool episode number 263, Time Management Strategies with Brandy Coffin. Brandy, how are you doing?
I am good. I'm so happy to be here, Meg. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. It's always fun to connect with other homeschool moms. Fun to see homeschooling spreading. Brandy lives back east, yes?
Yes, Massachusetts.
Yes. So it's so fun to have I love even just having somebody from different states and seeing different things at work. Because I know Utah, we have a pretty big homeschool culture here. And so even where I live, I feel like there's so many resources. So it's great to
Yeah,
see in other states and just how things work. So I'm so excited to have you here.
nice.
So let's start with a little bit of an introduction. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, my name's Brandy Coffin. I live in Massachusetts with my two kids and my husband. We've been homeschooling for 4 years. My kids are 11, just turned 11 the other day, and 8. And homeschooling was never really on my radar at all. I have a background in nutrition, so I was originally a nutrition coach. And that is how I got into podcasting. I have a podcast called Revival Homeschool, and how I got into coaching. And then the Lord put it on my heart to start homeschooling. And then, over the years, things have changed. And now on my podcast, instead of speaking mostly about nutrition, I speak mostly about homeschooling and parenting and all of that fun stuff.
That is so fun. That's awesome. I bet your nutrition plays a big role still within your home, does it?
It does. Within my home, it certainly does. It was interesting though, because I went through a big journey of, after I had my second son, I just had a ton of health problems, and so did he, and trying to figure that all out. And that's why I ended up going to school for nutrition. But it really became an idol for me.
Mm,
So it was very interesting the way that it played out was I had to really let go of it for a while. When I started I started homeschooling, and then I started with my clients. I actually ended up teaching more of time management because my nutrition clients couldn't manage their time effectively to eat right. So I ended up studying a lot of time management and really teaching a lot of that. And then as we started homeschooling, that was such a big part of that. Like, how do we manage our time effectively to do the things that we want to do? So in my home, nutrition still plays a big role, but I have definitely shifted from being so obsessed with it and like this is the only way, because it caused a lot of strife between me and my husband. And I
mm,
ended up judging not only like my husband, but like people around me, like, oh, I can't believe
interesting.
she would let her kids eat like that. And when the Lord really convicted me, like, oh, and there's that Bible verse, like, it's not what you put into your mouth that defiles a person, just really spoke to me like, oh, like this is an issue for me. So I really like stepped away from it for a while where I still ate healthy. We still ate healthy, but I really wasn't such a crazy person about it. And now we have
Right.
balance with it. Now we have healthy balance with it. But it was a journey and something I had to learn.
Yeah, that's so neat. Yes, when the Lord chastises us, So,
Hmm.
right? Whenever we get on our high and mighty horse of like, oh, you're so cute. Let me help you out.
All right.
That's so fun. So you've been homeschooling. I think you told me earlier since your oldest was in first grade, or
Yes.
did he do first grade? I can't remember.
Yep. So he ended up doing first grade. So it was, he went through first grade, and I want to say it was like January. I was writing in my journal, like, oh, should I homeschool? And it really, the thought came out of nowhere. It was like
Right.
from heaven. I have no idea why I wrote that down, aside from like I was called to do it. And as I started kind of like speaking to my husband about it, I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, I don't know. How could we do that? Because we knew nothing about it,
Right.
And then COVID hit, and doing school online really like opened my eyes. I'm like, I could totally do this, and it would be at this point better than sitting in front of a computer screen all day. And so then we decided to do it. And here we are 4 years later.
So fun. I love homeschooling. And what it does, like, what have you noticed the changes it's made for your family, just being together every day?
I've noticed. A lot of changes. The one that I think I noticed the most because it's so personal is the changes in my own heart.
Yeah.
It's like, honestly, like I remember I used to work at the office and then I left and I started my own coaching business and it was all about me.
Mm.
Like, oh, well, I've got to make sure I have this time for this. And just my attitude was much more selfish. And my world, even though I had kids and like, you know, my world revolved around them, my world really revolved around me.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I was more of like I remember talking to my cousin once and she was like, "Oh, we listen to kids music in the car all day." And I'm like, "What? You let your kids pick what you're listening to in the car?" And I just remember saying that because that's the place where I was at that time. And how now I'm looking back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I really was so selfish and had no idea." Not that there's anything wrong with me picking songs sometimes in the car,
Right.
but like, the my heart behind it. So I've noticed that the Lord has taught me so much through homeschooling and having to let go of my own standards, my control, the things that how I wanted to be just right so things could work out for me. And really start seeing things in a different way, come from a place of serving and how I can help others.
That's so interesting because I don't know that I even talk about that or even think about that much, but how much I was struggling emotionally until I was with my kids and serving them in that capacity instead of that more selfish mindset. So,
Mm.
yeah, that's so good to think about. Okay, this is a great topic for today, and I'm so excited because I think not even homeschoolers, but everybody struggles with time
Yeah.
and how to manage it and what does that look like? So how did how did you get into that with time management?
So a lot of it was with my nutrition clients, because I would help them to come up with plans to eat healthier, and a lot of that means that you have to make food,
Mhm.
and they weren't able to make that time, or to even a lot of it came down to priorities.
Right.
Because I think so much of our time management, it really comes down to what we prioritize and not being clear on what we're actually prioritizing, because what we prioritize comes out in how we spend our time.
Absolutely.
So I ended up getting into it with my nutrition clients and then just realizing, especially when starting homeschooling, like it's easy to spend your time right when you are by yourself for the majority of the day, right? Like it's
Mhm.
easy for me to say I want to do this and then do it when I don't have children around that are demanding my attention, right? But then when I started homeschooling, realizing, oh my gosh, my schedule can't go exactly how I want it to go. Even though I'm like, okay, this time we're doing lessons and at this we're doing this, things come up. Like this is real life. I'm dealing with other people and I have to be able to be flexible and figure out how to manage my time even when I'm dealing with a tantrum that is lasting 30 minutes or
Yeah.
whatever stage they're in, or wanting my son comes in wanting to have a deep conversation about something because he's just experienced something with one of his friends and I'm like, "Oh, but we've got to get this done." That's how do you manage that? How do you balance that where you can still get the important things done, but you have time for those other important things like emotions and relationships and all of those things that really are actually more important than checking the things off the list.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Like a hallelujah on me on my end for you of what I'm so excited. Okay, so Brandy's going to teach us 4 different things to help with time management strategies. So let's start with number 1.
Yeah, so number 1 is always going to start with your priorities.
Mm.
Right? So we talked about, I mean, what you prioritize comes out in your time. But I think so often what we realize is we're not doing the things that we feel called to do or getting the things done that we really feel like we should be because we're not managing our time right. So we have to, it's like this circle that we spin around in. So we have to start by getting clear on our priorities. And I think that starts with like the big picture vision. Like what is your vision? What's important to your family long term? Like what are your goals of raising your kids? And sitting down with your husband and like what are our goals and getting really clear on that? Because just having that big term picture really helps bring structure to your weeks, right? Like so if our relationships are a priority, now I'm making sure that I'm putting in time, scheduling in time to connect daily and weekly with the kids. Like one of our like we have play in our schedule. Like the kids are like, "Oh, is play like one of our priorities today?" And like lots of days it is. And like no matter what, we'll play at some point, but like some days we have like play is like our priority. And today, I was like, well, we had a big long weekend of playing because we had birthday parties. And then Sunday we played like all day. My kids, we did a Nerf gun war on Saturday with their friends. And so yesterday as a family, we like Nerf gunned like multiple times yesterday. So I'm like, I think we're going to focus on this other thing today and let them know like this is when our big playtime is, but then scheduling in those other like, okay, like I have time to connect with you just in my normal daily rhythm, and having like that rhythm and routine of the day where we connect at these certain things that the kids can expect every day, at bedtime, at meal times, wherever it is for my family and wherever it would be for your family when you're prioritizing that. But like when you're not clear on your priorities, it's easy to let that go, and not put that time in. Or even if you have it, like, oh, yeah, I want to connect with them at mealtime, let it get pushed aside because now something else came up, and it's easy to just, what is that? The tyranny of the urgent. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't.
So tyranny of the urgent is I think it was a book, and it's the idea that there are so many things that come up that seem so urgent that we'll just put our time into because we're not they're just like a phone call. The phone rings, you have to answer. But like, do you have to answer?
Right.
Like maybe it's actually more important for you to actually spend that time with your kids right now because this is what is important right now. So just big picture priorities. But then taking it down to our short-term priorities, right? So you have that big picture goal that kind of gives you like the routines that you want to put into your life, into your family. But then like the short-term priorities, breaking them down. So for like instead of like, okay, this is our goal for, relationships are our priority for our family long term. What are the goals for like the week, the day? Getting really specific, because when you have like a focus, like a weekly focus and a daily focus, it can really help you when things come up, like those tantrums, or like even like a friend. Like today I had a friend call. She had to take her husband to urgent care. Can my son can our son come over? Well, yeah, he can come over. But then also remembering, okay, now we're having 3 hours of, what that we didn't expect taken out of
Right.
the day of what we planned to do. What was most important for us today? So I knew today that my priority when it came to lessons or when it came to, relationships, I knew what my priorities were for today. So like for today, our lesson focus was we're learning about philanthropy. And we're doing a fundraiser for my niece who has spina bifida. And
Mm.
I was introducing that topic today. And I knew that was my main focus. So, like, if we didn't get to math or we didn't get to whatever, I knew that this is the one thing that I wanted to do today. So, when my friend called and is like, hey, can you help us out? I'm like, sure. The one thing that we're going to do is we have time for this one lesson. That's the one I'm going to pick. And I feel that it really helps us to not be overwhelmed when we start thinking like, oh no, I want to help, or this other thing came up, but like we had this, and this, and now I'm getting overwhelmed. I don't want my kids to fall behind in math, or I don't want whatever goes through our minds. How do we make a good choice without being overwhelmed? And I think those daily and weekly priorities really help us to make good decisions and be flexible at the same time.
That's so interesting. I love that you're saying this because when I was homeschooling, when all seven lived at home, and I had to protect the school hours
Mm,
as there was just a lot of them, right? And so if I didn't, then it wasn't going to happen consistently. And
yep.
so it's interesting. So I actually would turn my phone off.
Yeah.
If we had people that would come over, there was a sign on the door that says we're in the middle of school, right? I'm just really protecting it. But as you were saying that too, because now I'm a little bit more lax because it's the two boys. And so I can be a little bit more flexible. But it made me think of learning to say no to what? So
Yes. We're gonna
add
get
your
to that too.
priority. Oh, okay. I don't want to
No,
jump
keep
ahead
going. You
then.
can keep going though.
No, but it was so interesting because you knew what that priority
Mm,
was the I'm going to say it wrong. Philanthropy. There
I
we
know.
go.
I've said it so many times today that I think
Okay.
I've got it right.
You know what I'm talking about. But you said yes to that because it was your priority, and then which allowed you to also say yes to serving.
Hmm.
And so just knowing and understanding for sure of what it is that you do want so that you knew what to say yes to and what to say no to, which is beautiful.
Yeah. I do feel like I'm prone to like that decision fatigue.
Mm,
where I'm like, I start to get like frantic when things change. I don't know. This has always been my personality. Like, I like to make a plan. I like for it to work, like to the point where like I remember me and my husband were going out for like ice cream one day and we were in line at Dairy Queen and this was my plan. I'm like, we've got to get a Blizzard, right? This is my plan. And he's looking at me and he's like, this line looks like it's like 30 minutes long. I don't know if we should stay here. And I'm like, what? What do you mean this was our plan? And I had to like check myself, like, oh, it's okay to be flexible. That's just like my personality. And I don't know, I can dig deep into where it where it came
yeah,
from. But having those priorities in place are so beneficial when I'm realizing like, oh, things can't go as planned always. And maybe they
right.
shouldn't always go as planned. Because our plans are great, but sometimes the Lord has better plans for us.
Always. Yeah, no, that's so good. Okay, I won't skip ahead to anything else. So what was number two? So number one is to know your priorities. What's number two?
Is task partitioning. So basically, we're breaking our larger tasks into smaller tasks. And I literally do this with almost everything. So, like cleaning my shower. So basically, when you're able to take a larger task and split it into something smaller, it makes it more manageable. So then you're
Mm,
not going to put it off as often, right? So especially if you're having things that you put off, if they don't get done, try splitting it into a smaller, more manageable task. So my example of cleaning my shower, I don't have 30 minutes to scrub my shower straight, like to get it really clean. And more correctly, I should say that I do not want to scrub my shower for 30 minutes, right? Like I'm sure I
yeah,
could do it and I could find the time, but I do not want to, so I don't. And even no
absolutely.
matter how many times I say I'm going to, I'm not going to do it for 30 minutes. Like I'll do it every once in a while when it's awful, but like I would like to keep it up more, like better than that.
Right.
And breaking it into smaller chunks makes it more manageable. So for like this example, what I'll do is before I get in the shower every other day, I do 5 minutes. I have all the tools up there underneath the bathroom cabinet. I scrub one section for 5 minutes. I even put a timer on so I
Oh,
don't get distracted. I put a timer on. I did my 5 minutes and then I get in the shower and I enjoy my wonderful shower. But I rotate, right? So I'm cleaning a different section of the shower every time I do this. So it's constantly staying clean, but I never felt like I had to put in that much effort.
okay.
Yep. So I do this for lots of different things, mainly like my cleaning. I don't love cleaning. It's not my favorite thing to do, but like I do like to have a clean house.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah. So I tend to break up my cleaning into more manageable tasks. My projects, like even a lot of stuff that I do for the podcast, I'll break into smaller tasks. And one thing it really helps me with is not spending too much time in one area and neglecting other areas. Now, there's something obviously to be said for uninterrupted work. Like we can get in the zone, and sometimes it's really good to be there, and we can be more productive a lot of times when we can have that hour of uninterrupted work. But most of the time, as homeschool moms, we don't have an hour of uninterrupted time. And if we do, we have to choose wisely. So is it going to be the shower or is it going
Right.
to be something else? So I think it really helps to like, okay, I'll get some of the shower done and then I'll get some of the podcast done and then we'll get some of the school planning done. And like not breaking it up too much where I'm like, I'm not understanding and keeping track of what I need to do, but like maybe doing one section of the school planning at that sit down time and doing one section of the shower at that time and breaking it up so we're more better able to handle all of the things in a more balanced way.
That's
And then
interesting. Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I want to say there's a study that your brain can only really focus for 15 to 20 minutes.
Mm,
Right. And so that would make sense if you were planning your school year and then you're 15 minutes in, and then it's like, well, I might as well check some recipes while I'm online. Or what
yeah.
about this vacation? Right. And so when you give yourself that timer, 5 minutes, your brain's like, easy.
Yep.
I can do that and makes it much more doable, it feels like.
Definitely. And it works well with kids too, like obviously, right? Because even for them, their focus time is way lower than ours. Like if you feel like your kids have a hard time focusing, it's because they do, right? So what
Right.
is it, like 5 to 6 year olds, I think can focus for like 15 minutes max. 11 to 12, supposed to be able to do 30. I have an 11-year-old and I'm like, well, he just turned 11. So me and my husband were just talking about this today. I'm like, we're building up to the 30 minutes.
Right.
But splitting their assignments, I have found, has been such an amazing tactic because it's really helped them to not get overwhelmed. Like even like
Hmm.
today, my son was doing some language arts work and he started getting like really overwhelmed. He had like three left. And he was like, well, like you just like, I can't finish. And like, part of me sometimes, the control schedule part of me wants to be like, you have three left. You can do it, and sometimes that is the right tactic, but you have to be able to read your kids. And
Yes.
know, like, okay, right now, would it be beneficial for me to like encourage him and push him just a little bit harder, or is he gonna break?
Hmm.
know? So, and I could tell from his attitude, I'm like, you know what? You can, if you want, you can do those three questions later. Like, you don't have to do them right now. Um, but it just really helps them to be able to not get overwhelmed. So if you're having like a subject that your kids are frequently overwhelmed with, teach them how to task partition, teach them how to split it up. And at first you'll do it for them. Like here's a smaller section. You can work on this. And then next time you come to work on it, work on this section, and split it up. Even like chores, bigger chores like organizing their room and stuff. Um, like especially like my younger one. I mean, he's 8. Like I can't expect that he's going to be able to do organizing his room. But when I help him and I'm like, oh, hey, we're going to make the bed, make the bed first. And then the next task, we're going to put away our stuffed animals, and break it up. He can more manage that and learn how to go through the steps without being overwhelmed.
That's awesome. Okay. So what is the tip number 3?
Number 3 is habit stacking.
Mm,
So, have you heard of habit
I
stacking?
have.
Yes. Okay. So it's the idea of when you're trying to create a new habit, you're going to link it to an existing habit. This is so beneficial when we're trying to keep up with something that we don't like doing, or if there's something that you've really felt called to do that you haven't just been able to be consistent with yet. Habit stacking can be really helpful. So, say you wanted to start like consistently studying the Bible with your family, linking it to something that you do consistently already. Like, what are you already doing together? Like, maybe you have family dinner together most nights. Maybe you have TV time in the evening most nights. Or maybe Saturday mornings, you're all lounging around the house together. What are you consistently doing that's already a habit that you could stack that onto? Another example would be like laundry. So, I task partition my laundry and then I habit stack it because I am not naturally good. Like I said, I don't love housework. Like laundry is not my thing. And so, I split it into the three tasks. I need to put it in, I need to switch it, I need to fold it. Now, if I don't have that linked to another habit, I'm not doing it. And like sometimes I fall out of it. Like I just went through a season of I was really tired and we had some other things going on and the first thing to go was the laundry. I'm like, I know my limits right now. I have to let some things go. And so now I'm getting back into it. Like, okay, now I have more energy. I have to get back into doing this. And I had to remind myself, what were the habits that I was stacking this to? Right. So I'm putting the laundry in 8 o'clock. We always like, it's kind of like our bell for the day. Like, hey, it's 8 o'clock. Everyone start getting together for the day. So everyone will go and do like their bedroom chores, make their bed, get dressed. And that's when I take the laundry down because I do that every day. I'm going to go make my bed and get dressed every day around 8 o'clock ish. Take the laundry down, put it in the wash. Now, another thing that's consistent is dinner. I used to try to do lunch and we are consistent, but sometimes we're out of the house for lunch
Oh, I
more
see.
often. Yeah, more often than dinner. Like dinner, we're like always home for dinner. So, dinner, I switch the laundry. And then kids' bedtime, that's when we bring it up to be folded. And then either I or my husband, depending on who's free in the evening, will get that done. But literally without the habit stacking, I am like no good at laundry. But it's so much easier when we have habits. We all have habits that we do throughout the day, whether they're good habits or bad habits or whatever. We have routines, we have rhythms that we have in our lives. And when we're trying to start something new, if we can attach it to something that we already do consistently, it's so much easier to really follow through.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, right? Even if you wanted to start flossing, just setting it
Yeah.
out by your toothbrush, right? Just
Mhm.
those teeny tiny things to make it easier. And you can add that with your kids' school and teaching
Yeah.
them these skills, right? So something that they already do consistently. So
Mm.
they put on underwear every day. Do you have something by their undies, right? Like whatever that is of something that they're
Yes.
doing consistently, like, oh, that's right. Now I see it and I remember I'm going to start doing this thing.
Yep, definitely. I know that's what we do. Like the kids at bedtime often they read every night at bed.
Hmm.
So, I had started thinking, I'm like, they really should be, or not, I really would like them, and I think it would be beneficial for them to be reading the Bible on their own a little bit. So, it was so easy to incorporate that in. I'm like, here's your Bible, and here are your books that you always read. Read this for a little bit. We'll talk about it in the morning. Tell me what you learned, or what you had questions about, or whatever. And then they read their book, and it was so easy to start that habit because they consistently are sitting there reading every night anyway.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Okay, what is number 4?
Number 4 is to eliminate busyness. So we kind of alluded to this in the beginning about picking and choosing what you're going to do. So, it's just, if you feel called to do certain things in your homeschool, if you have a vision, which we all do,
Right.
we all homeschool for certain reasons, and we have a vision of how we thought it would play out, or how we feel it in our hearts that it should be playing out. And if we don't make time for those things, they're not going to happen. But in order to make time, we have to pick and choose, right? There are so many good things that can be done, whether it's, a million lessons, or getting work done, or chores done, or volunteering, or all of the sports, or all of the dance and gymnastics, and all of the events. There are lots of good things to do. But just because they are good and sound good doesn't mean it's for you in this season.
Absolutely. If you've ever read the book Essentialism, that's one of my favorite books to really hone in on what to say no to.
No, I've not read it, but I think that I would love to. Yeah, and that's one thing that I walk my clients through is getting that we start with the vision, right? The big
Mhm.
picture and the priorities, and now walking through like brain dumping. What are all the things that you are doing? And which ones are helping you get to that vision in this season? And which ones are really just not for you? And sometimes letting go of something that seems really good is the best choice for you to get to where your family needs to be.
Yes, absolutely. It's so interesting. So when I had all my kids living at home, I didn't work, right? Because I was homeschooling all of these kids and we were creating habits and we were creating a lot of skills. And it wasn't until I had kids start getting older and
Mhm.
started to move out that God was like, okay, now you have more bandwidth.
Yes.
And so, giving me an opportunity and space to work, but also being very intentional when I am willing to work
Yeah.
because my top priority is my family. I love being able to help other families, but like I'm still the steward of my own family,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes I think you can get really excited to work more or serve
Mhm.
more or do more good things, right? Put your kids in all the classes. But like you're saying, go back into your vision. And is that what you want at the end of the day? And if it is, then fantastic. Say yes to it, right? Because
Yep.
maybe your vision is like we serve at every opportunity.
Yep.
So your friend who needed help, it was like, we don't even worry about school if we're serving, right?
Mhm.
But I love that you had a very clear priority of what you were going to say yes to. And so you still got those things done and still had time to serve and do the things that speak to your heart.
Yeah. And it's hard to get rid of things sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like I remember just recently I had I really felt that I shouldn't teach children's church anymore. And
Mm.
I'm like, "Oh, but I love with being with the kids." But I knew that for my family, there was just some things going on, like the big emotions that were going on with some changes that my kids were going through. And I'm like, "No, I know that my family needs me here consistently." And having the energy to do that, to make the plans and to teach the lessons and to stay later at church, I know it's not for me right now. But it seemed like
Right.
such a good thing. It seems like, well, how could I just say no to that? But I knew it was right. And it's ended up being a real big blessing, although I was sad to say no. And there's things that we'll be sad to say no to, but if we when we do it, when we know that it's what we're supposed to do and we do it, the benefits and the blessings outweigh the loss.
Yes. It's interesting that you say that because when I started working a little bit more, the thing I had to give up was co-op.
Yeah.
Because it was a full day co-op and, I loved it. These girls are still some of my dearest friends, and my kids are still friends with them, but it was our season was over with that.
Yeah.
And so by saying no to that, it gave me space then to say yes to, podcasting, yes to a coaching business, yes to the things that I'm doing. But
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely, eliminating something so I can have the thing that God needs me to be doing right now.
Right, and it's all in season, right? That was your season, and now that season was over, and just being really aware and taking that time to sit down and pray about it and write all the things down and get clear on, like, what is it? What is for this season?
That was so good. This list is fantastic. So, do you check in with yourself weekly or daily of like, okay, what are my priorities this week? I think you kind of talked about that a little bit, but like what does that look like practical application for you?
Yeah, usually, on a quarterly basis, I'll, like, do, like, a whole like, I need to sit down and make sure that, like, I'm clear, and a lot of times the priorities are gonna stay the same, but what they're gonna look
Mhm.
like is different. Like, the deep priorities of relationship or serving, these things, the priorities stay the same, but how they're gonna play out in our lives. So, just doing, like, the philanthropy thing recently. So that was something that I'm like, "Oh, I want to teach my kids how to serve more in, like, a different way." Like, yes, okay, they see me, um, helping friends and this and that, but I wanna teach them how to be passionate about it. So we started that. So I sit down weekly after I do the quarterly, I sit down weekly and I think of like, okay, what is the lesson that I want to teach this week? So when I go through like we do like a family lesson throughout like every day. Usually we'll do like our learning together and then they'll have their independent learning. So usually it's that family lesson that I'm more focused on than they're like, I mean, math is easy. Like you can pick up a math book, you know what's next.
Mhm.
But the family lessons are more of what I kind of ruminate on and decide like what is priority right now. So I do that weekly. And then like I'll schedule out like the week, like, okay, I know that, and I'll look at the weather. I'm like, Friday's an awesome day. I know that Silas just got a kayak and he wants to go out kayaking one day this week. Friday is the day, you know?
Mm.
And I'm like, we had a real busy weekend, having birthday parties and all this stuff. We need a day where it's just us. We're in the house where so I'm like, Monday is a day we're focusing on our philanthropy lesson. And I'll put these priorities and daily focuses in, but then I sit down at the end of the day and I think of, okay, how did it go? Did we get it?
Mm.
Did we get it done? Did something come up? Or did things change? Where I'm like, oh, our focus has to shift. We're having a hard time with this or that, and we need to shift focuses. So I like to sit down too. And most of the time, they stay similar through the first half of the week. And sometimes, usually in the midweek, I'm like, ooh, we have to shift a little. But I do check in every day. It doesn't 5-10 minutes, think,
Mhm.
pray, and see if things need to shift.
Yes, this is so great because I feel like when you are actually accomplishing your priorities, you feel accomplished, right?
Mm,
That
yeah.
when you so let's say my priorities are my family and the relationships and our homeschool and then I'm out all day with some girlfriends or I go and I did some yard work or something. And so then I feel like I didn't do anything today
Yeah. Yep.
because I didn't do the things that were a priority to me.
Yeah, I got sucked into that. When we first started homeschooling, we do have such a good homeschooling community here. And it was easy to be like, oh, our friends are going hiking, or, there people are doing this and people are doing that. And, some of our priorities are our relationship, like our relationship with others, but our relationship with each other is gonna come first. I'm gonna put my relationship with my kids as a priority and with my husband as a priority over, our outside community. And learning. and creating a love of learning, that is a priority. So when we were out hiking, that was great. And we still do that. But I had to cut back a little because I'm like, oh, we're out doing this stuff. And although that is a priority, I'm neglecting these more important priorities. And we had to shift because I felt that way. We would do all this stuff and it was great stuff. And the kids would be learning out in the woods and like they would be learning, but it wasn't what I had felt called to do. It wasn't what was priority in that season. And I would feel that way. I would feel overwhelmed, like I'm not getting anything done because I
Right.
wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Okay, these 4 tips are so awesome. Brandy, where would people go to find more about you?
Yeah, so my website is revivalhomeschool.com and I have a podcast called Revival Homeschool. I'm not big on social. I like will post the graphics of my podcast, but I'm not huge on there. But I do have a Facebook group where people chat about all things homeschool as well. And I that's always linked inside my podcast notes.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your wisdom with us, and have a great rest of your week.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.